I'm John Felt, and with a lot of active weather going on and the start of spring, I thought I'd take a moment here to put together some of my thoughts on the 2019 growing season across key Midwest ag regions. Now, right now, many people, including myself, are really weary of winter. Areas in blue and especially purple have had either a severe or an extreme winter due to either extended periods of cold or quite a bit of snow. So we look at the ag region, we see that the eastern ag belt, Indiana and Ohio, for example, and most of Illinois, experienced a fairly mild winter. But then as we get into western Illinois, across Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, and Nebraska, we experienced an unusually harsh winter, including parts of northern Kansas and northwest Missouri. So we look at the departure from normal as far as temperatures go during the winter months. What we see here is we see that gradient again with unusually cold weather over the upper Midwest and northern Corn Belt. But then as we went into the eastern Corn Belt here from Illinois over into Ohio, temperatures were actually above normal for that period of time. So unusually cold, unusually mild. As far as snowfall goes over the seasonal average here, you can take a look here for your area, but generally heaviest snow occurred as would be expected over the upper Midwest, and I'm going to talk about that. A lot of that's still staying on the ground. We had more recent heavy snow over this area here with that bomb cyclone that produced rapid melt and led towards the flooding situation along the Missouri. Now, if you read my content, I've been talking about this a lot. I think this is sort of interesting here, how this is the green up, the spring green up, and the line right here is indicating where south of this area is in red, indicate where the green up has occurred earlier than normal. And then as it hit that cold air, you can start to see real abruptly here along the Oklahoma-Texas line, blue is later than normal. So we've really transitioned here from this earlier than normal in Nashville, below normal in Indianapolis, and most of the Corn Belt we're now running near normal, but as we get into spring, I think we're going to see a lot more of this blue. It's going to take a while to green up. You can see this also for the average temperatures again, that line here. Southeast U.S. unusually warm. Montana record cold in this region here, and that extended into the upper Midwest. As far as soil moisture goes, and again, I'm looking at a snapshot right now because before I get into my forecast thoughts, I want to sort of set the stage here on what's going on right now. So we don't have any drought actually over the area, and I think that's sort of key here. I really key into soil moisture. We have unusually wet soils here, and as we know, with all the flood inundation, all the melting snow, ice action, it's been really a bad situation along the Missouri River Valley. But that extends over a good part of the ag region here. I don't see too many dry spots, which is indicated in yellow here. Most of it looks like we have either normal to above normal soil moisture. So right now, as we know, we have a really bad flood situation, especially where these purple dots are, red and purple dots. We have lots of inundation of key farm areas along the river valleys, along smaller tributaries, and this is going to continue for a while. It looks like the flood inundation, we're going to have another flood wave pushing down, especially on the upper Mississippi as we get into the latter part of March and even into early April. Now I want to step back and sort of give some thoughts from the scientific side on why we've had this type of winter. And one of the reasons we've had this, and this is speculation, but right now if we look at Arctic ice, way up in the Barents Sea, Siberia, Arctic regions, there's really a lot of open water, unusually open water. And the theory goes that the more open water in that region, you can get more evaporation into the atmosphere, more downstream snow, and that then serves as a season-long cold source. And I think we've seen that for a couple seasons now. And we very well could see this next winter. So we have this cold source up in way in the Arctic region, lots of snow, and then what that does is bring that cold air down into the upper Midwest. And I think that's what we've seen for a couple winters now, and we could see this in the future as well. Okay, so I talked about the situation as far as more snow on the ground, and this is the current snow water content, and you can see some of it in the Missouri Basin. This is the dividing line right here. So we have some in the Missouri Basin, we have some in the Mississippi Basin, and with the weather, just from a historical perspective, we should be well above freezing for our daytime highs, but we're going to melt this very quickly over the next number of days, probably by this weekend, and that water is going to come down. It's going to reinforce the high flows in the Missouri, probably not higher flows. I don't think we're going to get higher flows, but it's going to maintain the flood flows on the Missouri, and then it's going to bring a flood wave down the Mississippi as all that water melts. Okay, now that I set the stage, let's talk about some forecast thoughts as far as the long-term forecast goes. So first of all, one of the things I want to review is, will these recent and long-term trends continue? I want to look at some oscillations, how we have these long-term oscillations. I want to look at feedback and soil moisture anomalies, and that's very important. I want to talk about El Nino, and I've also reviewed climate models. So those are the factors that I looked at, among others, in my long-range forecast. Okay, so first up, let's look at spring and summer. When we go back and look at spring and summer statistics, it's interesting that we do see that pattern I've been talking about the upper Midwest being unusually cool. That's blue here. That is, I mentioned the lack of Arctic ice, and I think this region here has been unusually cool in springs, and that could continue, not just this spring, but in future springs. But the rest of the area, a large part, eastern Corn Belt, has been warmer than normal during springs. I plotted it out here, and you can see that trend. This is the entire Corn Belt. You can see that blue line. That's the trend of warmer. And then as we get into summer, also warmer or hotter summer temperatures. So overall, with the exception of North and part of South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, maybe parts of Iowa, the rest of the Corn Belt has trended warmer than normal during the spring. Okay, so the second thing I wanted to look at after trends, is there evidence of feedback or a persistent soil moisture anomaly? Well, I don't play this up so much heading out of winter into spring, but it's a big deal in summer. Wet soils tend to evaporate moisture in the atmosphere, and we get daytime probabilities of rain. Parched, dry soils, on the other hand, don't release much moisture. It's not there. So right now we look at the soil moisture, we see lots of areas with plenty of soil moisture, and I think that's one of the key ingredients into my outlook, in that we're in pretty good shape. Now there are a couple areas in the eastern Corn Belt that are running a bit on the normal side, but most areas there's plenty of soil moisture. So we look at Iowa, for example, I see a lot of green. Soils are on the wet side, but once we sort of dry that out, which we eventually will, I think that's going to set the stage. We have good medium and lower level recharge over the winter months. That is a key ingredient of adequate soil moisture going into the heat of the summer. Okay, I want to look at some oscillations, and there are a lot of oscillations we look at. These are some of them: North Atlantic oscillation, Pacific Decadal oscillation, but one of the ones that is looked upon the most is the El Nino, La Nina type of oscillation, and that's sea surface temperatures in this region right here. And there's a strong correlation between warmer than normal or El Nino conditions and impacts over the U.S. Okay, so right now there are different flavors of El Nino. There's a Mordecai and a traditional one. I'm going to focus on the traditional one here. That looks what it looks like to me. And this is saying that we have, generally speaking, a wet southeast U.S. We have this wet California, that we've seen that recently. And there's some indication of drier than normal weather over the eastern Corn Belt. So what's El Nino going to do? Well, there are a number of models now indicating that El Nino might actually extend right into the summer months. Initially, it was saying that it was going to dissipate as we got into the summer, but a number of models now are showing that it could persist. Now, I want to put a caveat in here. The role of El Nino is much stronger in late winter and spring than it is in summer. We get a lot more localized impacts that flavor the weather in summer than El Nino. But having said that, let's look at March, April, and May. And it shows California. Blue and green is wetter than normal. Brown is drier. And then the southeast U.S. And then as we get into April, May, and June, I want to point out here there's a fairly strong correlation between drier weather, and the composites just show how the confidence. So this orange is saying high confidence of dry weather, high confidence of wet weather in this region here. Those are some of our key anomalies, assuming this El Nino does persist. Drier over a large part of the central and eastern Corn Belt, wet over Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. So that would indicate, looking at that, is that we're going to have a transition, and that's going to be, for temperature and precipitation, my theme, a transition from winter into summer, from cold to hot, wet to dry, and of course you're saying cold to hot. Well, we always get that, but I think our anomalies are going to change as well. Okay, now I also looked at a number of climate models, and I certainly don't have time to put them all here. This is just one of them, and it's saying March, April, May, but this shows through the summer as well. Brown or orange here, or brown, showing above normal temperatures and near normal precipitation. And I think that's sort of what I'm buying, is once we transition, we're going to go into this warmer than normal pattern. Now there are a couple other factors that aren't as well understood. We definitely have a very low amount of solar activity going on right now. We're in solar cycle 24, and you can sort of see this trend has been going down here. And some thought out there that this could be impacting our weather, but it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what this is doing to our weather. Now, I'll tell you where I would look, though, is I would look at global ocean temperatures, and that, I think, is where with time we would see some slowing of the warming or even cooling. And so far I haven't seen that. Matter of fact, last month was the fourth hottest global earth and ocean temperature on record. Okay, so let's bring this together here. These are some of my thoughts as we go through the spring and into summer. First of all, precipitation. El Nino is generally trending dry over most of the Corn Belt, especially the central into the eastern Corn Belt. Recent trends, though, have been wet. Soil moisture is definitely adequate, if not surplus, over most areas, and the models are showing adequate. So those are some of my thoughts as far as precipitation. And you can see there is some conflict here, as you would expect. Some saying wet, some saying dry, but I'm just sort of presenting them here. We look at temperature. The recent trends have been definitely cold over most of the region. Sea ice patterns would say that's going to continue with some more cold intrusions, and some of the models are showing that right as we get through the end of March, some more intrusions of this cold air. Gradually, though, that should work its way out as we get into late spring and summer, and the long-term trends are indicating warmth, warmer than normal temperatures, and models are also indicating warmer than normal temperatures. So we look at the NOAA outlook for March, April, May. We can sort of add this to looking at our models. As far as temperature goes, it has a large area here of East Sea, and that just means equal chances of either near, above, or below normal temperatures. And then precipitation, pretty much the same. So it's saying that not much of a push one way or the other as far as which way the weather might go. That doesn't give us a whole lot of guidance one way or the other, but sometimes that's just the way it is. Okay, let's pull this all together here, and this sort of pulls my forecast as we go into spring and summer. First of all, I don't think the cold weather is over quite yet. It looks to me like we're still in this pattern where we're going to have a few more intrusions of unusually cold air. We're going to unfortunately not have a persistent warming trend, more variability, and that's going to result in a slower than normal early spring warming of soils. Okay, second, I think as we get into the very end of March into April, I think we're going to start this transition. We're going to have more variable weather, alternating periods of colder than normal and warmer than normal, thunderstorms. That's your typical spring weather. I think we're going to get more into that pattern. We're going to let go of this grasp of this unusually cold weather. And then third, as we get into the real core of spring, I think we're going to transition again more into this typical spring weather. We're going to see variability across the Corn Belt. It'll be a little bit hard to predict this variability, but it's going to bring our soil moisture, our temperature, and our precipitation overall closer to a normal. I don't see persistent extremes, but I do see typical variability. And then finally, as we get into summer, I'm going to merge my outlook back with long-term trends. I'm going to call for modestly hotter than normal summer temperatures, and I say modestly. I think typically variable rainfall. We will have some scattered dry spots, but not intense, widespread soil moisture deficits. I do not see widespread drought. And overall, mostly adequate soil moisture going through the summer. And overall, when I bring it all together, despite some frustrating start, I do think the 2019 growing season will be positive with adequate soil moisture and some problems here and there, but overall, no widespread intense drought. So I hope that helps you, and keep in mind that this is a document content that's dynamic. I do put out information weekly that'll update all this information. You can get that by go to mershmanseedsweather.com and sign up to receive my content. If you have any questions, you can send those to me, John, John, at bluewateroutlook.com. And again, I hope this helps you. Just wanted to put some of my thoughts out there on the spring and summer weather possibilities as we start spring. Thank you for listening to that, and sign up for my information as we go forward.